Thanks so much to all my patrons. Join now to help support the channel and help pick the books that I review. Link in the description. And I am done. Okay, so I just got done reading The Player of Games. This is book 2 of the Culture series by Iain Banks, and I want to give you my unedited thoughts on finishing this book, which was literally just right now. So I'm giving this one a 3 stars. I don't normally give 3 stars, but this is a couple now in a row that I've given, or recently that I've given. And I'm just kind of meh on this book. You know, it was an interesting enough plot to keep me going in it. But it never wowed me at any point. There was never any aspect of the story, not any part of it, not any, theme of it that just kind of blew me away, which is kind of what I need for a book to be, kind of higher up in the rankings. This is a book that I'd never heard of before, although I probably should have. I'm rather ignorant over popular or formerly popular sci-fi books. Apparently this book was rather popular when it came out a while back. I don't know exactly when it came out, but it was quite a while ago. This book was picked for me on my Patreon raffle. So on my Patreon account, if you join, depending on the tier, you get to put a book or two, and I spin a wheel and whatever gets picked, I have to read. And this one won. When I looked it up, I was a little bit weirded out because it's book 2. And it's like, why would I read book 2? And I looked it up, and apparently these books are set in the same universe, but you can read them in different orders. And apparently this is like the one you're supposed to start with, even though it's the second book. So I'm sure there's a more complicated story there, but yeah, there it is. So, for me, this felt like, while I was reading it, it's, at least at a certain point, pretty early on in the story, that it felt like a worse version of Ender's Game. And I kept having that feeling throughout the book. This person has to travel through space to go to this big competition, show that they're, the best, and they constantly have to prove themselves to people who are constantly doubting them, even though that we know as the reader that they're excellent, but other people kind of don't, or, are scared of them, so they gang up on them. There's these twists along the way with a kind of big reveal throughout the story, and, it felt like the same sort of plotting. Now, I don't know which book came out first, but, there was one of these books took major inspiration off the other one. They're different enough to be, not a copy of each other in any stretch of the imagination, but the overall arc of the story felt very similar. While Ender's Game had a game that was extremely easy to visualize, at least for me, and it felt like I was there. When the different matches were described, I could see everything going on. It all made sense to me. The game was simple. It felt like a space version of like some sort of soccer weird hybrid military game, and it made sense. The Player of Games, however, has this game that the reader's not even meant to even close to understand. It made it really confusing. It's like the most complicated game ever in existence. It shows you that off the bat. It tells you that you can't even begin getting good at it until you play it for years. And at no point does the author try to say like, oh, here's the basic rules of the game. So when you read these segments that could be really engaging in an Ender Game sense, in Ender Games, I found myself thoroughly looking forward to the different games that would happen. And whenever they'd happen, I'd be like, this is awesome. And this one, it was like, okay, I guess you got to just say these random words and make up stuff. And, it was definitely what I would consider a letdown. So let's go over different aspects of this and talk about them. Let's go over the basic plot here without spoiling anything. So you've got this character who's living on this post-scarcity world where robots give you anything you would ever want. They give you water, they give you food, they give you anything that you could conceivably imagine. You don't have to work. It's just like, everything is given to you, and life is easy. And in this world, the people can swap genders whenever they want. So these men will be men and they want to have babies. So then they switch to women to do that. It's interesting. It's not like integral to the plot or anything, but I've certainly never read anything quite like that before. And in this world, they don't have much else to do, because there's no jobs or anything. And that, a lot of people play this, they're game players, and games are a big deal. And this main character of the story, he is one of the best game players. They play all sorts of different kinds of card games and board games and all these things. He's awesome. And very early on in the story, something happens that compels him, I won't say what it is, to go interstellar, join a different society because they have the biggest, coolest game ever, and he wants to go win. And that's the basic structure of this story. It's nothing mind-blowing. You know, again, interesting enough for me to want to keep going and not put it down, but no point was I like, that's awesome. You know, there was a moment where it felt like, you know, when he's called to go to this other world where I'm like, oh, what it'll be like? You know what? But then it was like, oh, yeah, okay, sounds good. So world building, you know, it was decent. I mean, I did, find myself engrossed in the society here. I felt like there was something there. It never blew me away, but I'd say that the world building was one of the better parts of this book. I'd probably, if I was giving little mini grades to each aspect of the story, I'd probably say that the world building is like a 4 out of 5. In terms of the sci-fi elements here, I do always love this. I'm a big Fallout fan, always been. So the idea of these robots going around helping you throughout your daily life was something that I've seen a lot of. Clearly got inspiration either from here or other things. But I kept visualizing those kind of robots that are kind of like flying tentacle things in Fallout while I was reading this. I enjoyed the stark differences between the worlds here and our world. Nothing really blew me away though. I did enjoy the aspect of societies being surrounded by this gaming system. It was cool. But yeah, whatever. Characters, I felt like were, again, I mean, I hate to keep saying this, but nothing special. I mean, the characters are just kind of there. You don't spend a lot of time with more than a small handful of characters. You've got the main character who you're in with the whole time. You've got these robots that are around him. One of them at the beginning of the book, and then another one through most of the rest of the book. You've got like a spaceship that kind of talks to him. And then you have these other characters in this other world that interact with him, but not to a large degree. He's constantly being pitted up against new people and having to interact with them. So you get these stints of 30, 40, 50 pages with another character, and then you're moving on to somebody else. So you never really get to feel them. They don't feel that unique. They all kind of seem a little bit similar to me because they're all from this different culture. The culture kind of acts really similarly to each other. So yeah, it's just kind of there. Prose, I felt like was pretty good. It definitely felt older. It definitely is a little staler than I'm used to. But for what it was and when it was made, it was good. Nothing that really blew me out, but certainly readable. Certainly nothing frustrating. And he's a good author. So, do I recommend this book to people? Not really. I'm always intrigued by reading these older works that are more formative for the genre. In this case, science fiction. So I'm glad that I read it. But I'm in a little bit unique situation where I read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books and I review them. And so it helps me get this historical perspective around things. So I'm glad that I read it in that sense. It's not a very long book. But if I was just a normal reader, like a normal person that read, dozens of books a year or less, and, had the great, awesome privilege of being able to have tons of books that are top tier that you have yet to read, no, I probably wouldn't. But yeah, and if you're a really big sci-fi fan, A, you've already probably read this, and B, maybe this is amazing in the sci-fi world. And if you're a sci-fi guy, it's awesome. And there's probably sci-fi people that hear some of the fantasy books that I read and they're like, that sounds horrible. And I'm like, no, it's awesome. Trust me, bro. So they're probably the same way. So that's what it is. But I'm not going to give a glowing recommendation to this thing. And I really never will for something that's 3 stars. So not very long video, but I don't really have a ton to say. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons: Anna G, CJ, Doust, Darren, Gregory, JD, Jonathan, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, 𝐿, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Sydney Baker, Tay C, Tahir, Anna, Andra, Blair, Brock, Evan, Harry B, Joe UK, Kat Mick, Michael Sugarman, Philippe, Sky, Wacky, and Zion. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video, and if you want to watch some more content from my channel, click over here and I've got some good videos for you. Thanks so much.